tenham tido uma manhã proveitosa e que tenham tido um bom almoço. Estamos de volta. Vamos agora dar início à sessão Building Smart Cities. Esta sessão conta com o Huawei, a Mindsite, que é uma empresa da Indra, com a Cisco e é moderada por Henrique Santos, docente da Universidade do Minho.
Good afternoon. My name is indeed Richard Budel, and I am Huawei's Chief Technology Officer for the public sector in Western Europe, and I'm happy to have the chance to speak with you this afternoon and talk a little bit about what Huawei sees as being the current state of smart city development in Western Europe and the role that platform technologies can play in helping to achieve the goals and objectives of smart cities and what city governments might need to do in order to take advantage of that. We start by looking at the drivers of change, of course, in Western Europe. And quite often when we talk about smart cities, you'll still hear people talk about the fact that in 2011, for the first time in human history, half the world's population lived in an urban environment. And you'll hear people talk about the fact that by 2050, that number will rise to 70 or 75%. But the reality is that for a Western European audience, that's not really relevant because our cities have been urbanized already for centuries. In fact, the drivers of change for West European cities sit in three predominant areas. There is a need for urban transformation that's driven by, number one, the struggle to maintain basic infrastructure. We have challenges in West European cities, not because we've got a sudden influx of new inhabitants from the countryside, but rather because our cities are old. And because we've been urbanized for centuries, and our water and our road and our sanitation and our electricity infrastructures are crumbling as a result of age, not just new demand. We also see that the demographic composition of West European cities is changing. And depending on where you look, you will see a number of different changes. You might find cities where the population is trending towards a much older average age, and in other cities, it's trending downwards, and you're seeing younger populations. The ethnic composition of our cities is changing, and there's also a change in the workforce, partly because of the changing demographics and also because of changing technology, which results in a change in the fundamental nature of the work that's being performed. And we can't talk about the changing nature of cities without talking about the changing climate and the reality that we are seeing more frequent and more serious weather events that are having a dramatic impact on the lives of urban citizens. We also can see, of course, that globalization is driving change in cities. And that was brought to the forefront in January of this year when China went into a lockdown. And within just a few days, businesses all over the world were starting to have challenges as a result of not having access to the raw materials or the products or the services that they needed in order to perform their business. And so in addition to climate instability, the economic interdependence of the world is having an impact on cities. And the butterfly effects, the idea that a butterfly flapping its wings in Tokyo could create a hurricane in Rio de Janeiro, is moving beyond just the climate or the economy. But we can see that small changes in one part of the world can have profound impacts in the politics or the culture or the socialization or the health of other parts of the world. And finally, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about data, of course. And everybody talks about the massive amounts of data that are being created, petabytes every hour, trillions of photos that are being taken, more photos being taken in 1 year than in all of the previous history. And they talk about the volume and variety and the velocity of the data, the three so-called V's of data. But again, these are not relevant or meaningful indicators for a smart city. In fact, they're only helpful insofar as they get you to understand how big and how fast a storage solution you need. we are overlooking what are in fact the two more important V's, which are the veracity or the truthfulness of data and the value of the data that's being collected. We can create enormous data repositories, but if we cannot have confidence in the accuracy and the truthfulness of that data, and if we don't know how to find or extract the value in that data, then all we're doing is shoveling money into the piggy banks of the storage vendors. And that certainly can't be what we're trying to do with Smart City. What we've seen in Western Europe, and I had the great pleasure of being able to leave Europe for a couple of years to go and live in Africa and in North America. When I came back in Europe in 2017, what was quite obvious to me was that West European cities were falling behind the rest of the world because they were focused on smart city as a technology. And in a way that makes sense, because if you look at urbanization, as I said, we've already been urbanized for centuries, and there are reasons to change, but not sufficient to really cause us to think about our behavior. Poverty, with all due respect to those people who are suffering, particularly right now, poverty is not a big enough issue in Western Europe to drive changes in the way that cities operate, nor do they have the requirement driven by economic stimulus. And the environment is something that we always talk about, and it certainly is a noble goal. But cities in Western Europe are not experiencing the same kind of challenges as the rest of the world. For example, the crippling air quality in Beijing or Mexico City, or the sinking and flooding that's happening in Manila. Those types of dramatic environmental changes are not present in Western Europe, and they're not driving big changes, nor do we have huge healthcare needs to drive change, nor do we see, for example, the phenomenon that's coming up in South America and North America of cities becoming bankrupt. And with all due respect, we don't have any public safety issues in West European cities significant enough to be driving change. And so missing those types of external stimuli, or at least missing the ones serious enough to require a change, what we've seen is that progress towards smart cities has been driven by IT vendors and by technology. And smart city projects are often technical experiments or ego projects designed to help a city become cool and become sexy and to attract a particular type of image. And so smart city services in West Europe have tended to be proofs of concept or proofs of technology or pilot projects that never really move into a production stage because the goals and objectives simply aren't there. They're set out to prove the attractiveness of a technology, but they don't have the stickiness to stay in operation. What we also see is that because the cities have said, we want to become smart, but we don't want to pay for it, they've given the responsibility to the technology vendors to deploy the services on their own as long as they can provide the funding on their own. And that means that the technology providers quite often own the smart city services that are being deployed, and the city gets pushed off to the sidelines. And what that means then is not only does the city no longer have the direct relationship with the citizen, but it means that the financial benefits that come from smart city services go to the IT companies, go to the service providers, and the shareholders or the investors behind them. So it means that the cities are not reaping the financial benefits when there are financial benefits to be found. And because the IT providers have been told to go and fund the projects on their own, they look for the more lucrative projects. So smart city services that are going to generate them a positive return on investment. And generally, those are services that have targeted the upper middle class and the upper classes of society. And so we've seen in Western Europe that smart city services have tended to increase separation of social strata. They are increasing the difference between the rich and the poor in the cities. And surely that should not be considered a goal or an objective of smart cities. Parking is a perfect example. A smart parking solution is a really great, valuable solution, but it's based on the premise that you have the ability to buy a car, insure a car, drive a car, and park a car. And there are segments of the population who simply don't have that ability. And finally, the result of this has been a massively heterogeneous ICT infrastructure, because each IT service provider can choose their own IT stack, their own infrastructure, their own approach, because they're being asked to pay for it themselves. And that gives them the right to choose how each service is going out. And so if you have 30 smart city services, you probably have 20 or 25 different smart city technology stacks as well. And that's not sustainable in the long term. So the traditional approach to rolling services out hasn't made things easy. If we look at a traditional IT stack from the user interface and the application at the top down through storage and networking and devices at the bottom, we started the smart city journey in the early 2000s when we rolled out City 411 or electronic service delivery strategies, where we were using a traditional office environment or a service counter to provide integrated services to citizens. And the cities found vendors who have these types of solutions, and government departments then operated these software products, and they used telco infrastructure to do the connecting in the back end. And once we had those service counters up and running, we then extended them into the self-service kiosk domain so that citizens could help themselves without needing to go to an office. And then gradually we made those services available through laptops and then eventually mobile devices. And over time, we started to say, hey, if we look at smart streetlights, we can get an immediate 70 or 80% cost savings if we switch from traditional halogen bulbs or sodium vapor bulbs to LED lighting. And so smart streetlight solutions came into the environment, and we had vendors who provided the hardware and the software for managing those, and a different telco perhaps was used to do the back-end connectivity. And then we said we need to manage our electricity grids, and so we came up with smart metering and a different application provider. And this time the government said, okay, we're going to come in and we're going to manage that underlying infrastructure. And now, because we're managing that underlying infrastructure, we're also going to deploy public Wi-Fi on top of that. So we're going to bring in a new vendor to provide the end user applications. We'll manage the back-end infrastructure. And then a smart parking service provider came along and said, we've got a great solution for you. And the good part is you don't have to worry about any of the infrastructure or managing the service, because we run on Google Cloud and we can do that on your behalf. And then the smart trash bin vendor came in and said the same thing, the only difference being that they run on Amazon Web Services. And then an air quality monitoring service came along and said, we have a cloud-based solution for managing air quality. But this time the government said, you know what? We, as your IT service provider, are going to build our own cloud environment using Red Hat, and we're going to provide the cloud for the air quality monitoring system. And now that we've got our own government cloud up and running, we can roll out a smart trash bin solution, and we can roll out a smart tour guide solution. And then we saw a demand increase for more and for more and for more smart city services. And that heterogeneous environment became more and more and more complicated. And eventually government IT departments came along and said, you know what, we've got to try and standardize and rationalize this. So we want to become the IT service provider. And we moved towards what we now refer to as a platform approach, at least from a technical perspective. And that makes sense because the platform approach has proven itself in the private sector. If you go back to the mid-1990s and the emergence of eBay and Amazon, and then Facebook and Alibaba and Uber and Airbnb and Booking.com and all of those IT unicorns that everybody loves to talk about, we see that a big part of their success has been quite simply because their business model, the platform business model, has helped to create a very, very strong competitive differentiation. And they're characterized by a couple of attractive things. Number one, simplicity of access and use. It's easy to consume products or services from these platforms. And they aggregate. They give you a one-shop or one window view into an entire world of back-end products or services. And they've got the ability to provide and manage both volume and scale. and do so in a way that's very highly personalized, not customized in the sense that I determine what my experience is going to be, but personalized in the sense that they determine what my experience is going to be based on what they know about me. And that's created an enormously attractive and sticky value proposition. But there are also some negative characteristics to the platform approach. They tend to dehumanize and commoditize the end users, and they treat the end user as pieces of value to be commercialized. They also, as we've seen from a privacy perspective, tended to be massively invasive and create enormous security vulnerabilities. And from a commercial perspective, they are shareholder driven. These platforms are generating enormous financial returns, but those financial returns are often not being shared with the citizens. And if we look at smart city implementations, they're not being shared with the cities either. So the platform approach brings both benefits and challenges. On the plus side of the equation, a platform approach can allow a government to focus on impacts and outcomes without needing to focus on delivery. In other words, the city is no longer responsible for delivering services. It is responsible for the delivery of services, and it helps to coordinate an underlying network of entities who are responsible for the individual services themselves. And that means that a platform approach can help a city government to become agile and responsive to the needs of the citizens. That also means that the cities can start to achieve a level of efficiency that they haven't really been able to get before. It gives them the ability to leverage valuable resources and sometimes scarce resources and maximize the application or the extraction of value from those resources. And interestingly, the platform approach, despite the fact that it's so broad, has also proven especially effective at targeting niche market segments. And that's important for a city because in a city environment, those niche market segments are often represented by the most vulnerable members of society. And what we've seen historically in the smart city domain, as I mentioned earlier, is that these vulnerable segments of the population who often are the ones most needing city services are least able to access them. And the flat platform approach starts to address that in a very positive way. And as I mentioned before as well, a platform approach can really truly allow a city to engage with its audience in a very sticky and attractive fashion. And it helps the city to establish a very high quality of service at the initial engagement level, at the initial user interface and user experience level. So if we look at the challenges, well, that same quality of service becomes a problem when you talk about the underlying services. In other words, the city can make sure that the citizen has a very positive, consistent, well-branded initial experience with the platform. But in the long term, it's the individual service providers that determine what the user experience is going to be. And that's difficult for the government to manage because they're managing now a very large ecosystem of service providers. And finally, the platform approach can cause problems with large, powerful service providers who don't want to accept a platform approach because it means that they lose their relationship with the citizens and they lose the direct source of revenue that have made them large and powerful. In adopting a platform approach, there are a couple of implications about what this means for the role of city governments. A government has to be able and willing to move from a service delivery model where they are directly responsible for creating and delivering services to citizens to an orchestration model where they may be delivering some services directly, but they're also responsible for coordinating the delivery of services that come from other entities. They also have to stop managing and measuring individual KPIs at a micro level and instead start looking at managing the macro level impacts and outcomes. And instead of being inwardly focused, inwardly looking at the internal organization of resources in support of service delivery. They focus on the end users and meeting their needs, and moving from transaction-based to relationship-based service delivery. Although, to be fair, most governments have done a very good job of this in the last few years. And there's a move from government as an organizational entity to governance, providing both leadership and controllership to the service delivery organizations. And so the smart city becomes defined differently. I've already talked about the fact that a smart city answers 3 different types of questions. Instead of answering the question, what is happening now, the smart city answers the questions, what could happen, what should happen, and what will happen. And it does so in order to establish a sustainable balance, an equilibrium, so to speak, between the economy, the environment, and the society that it serves. And it does so by governing and orchestrating a repeatable and scalable model of high quality, consistent service delivery to all of the stakeholders within the city. So that digital platform becomes the core building block of the smart city, and it simplifies the underlying complexity of the IT environment and enables immense freedom in the definition and the selection and the delivery of the end user services. And I'll give you 2 very quick examples. In the city of Duisburg in North Rhine-Westphalia, the northwest corner of Germany, the city's approach to smart city was focused on building what you see in front of you as the Rhine Cloud. The city of Duisburg said, we know that everything is going to be based on top of a cloud, and so we will start by building that cloud environment. And they hid all of the underlying technical complexity and made it possible to deliver services. And then they chose 2 different audiences. They went out to the private sector and said, we are going to offer cloud services to you in the private sector. And you can choose to use us as opposed to Google or Amazon or Microsoft or any of the other commercial cloud providers. And so the city of Duisburg went into competition with the private sector with one really big advantage. Anybody who uses their cloud environment is able to say that they are using a government-sanctioned, a government-approved, a government-hosted cloud environment. And if you're a company who sells services to other governments, it's very attractive if you can say that your service is hosted on a government cloud. And by moving into the private sector and generating a business model that creates revenue flow, the city of Duisburg has provided a source of revenue that can pay for the services that they build and host and offer to the residents and the tourists and the businesses and the employees in the city of Duisburg. So that's one approach that's been taken, looking at a platform. In Cagliari, Sardinia, they've taken a second approach, which is to start at the user interface level, where they built a UI platform that allows the integration and aggregation of data and services from a variety of locations so that the city can manage its assets without worrying about what's happening in the back end. And then in the city of Gelsenkirchen, they've taken a third approach where they focused on the data element of the platform. And they've said, we don't know what technology we're going to need in the future, and we don't know what services we're going to offer in the future. We just know that they're going to change. The only thing that isn't going to change is the need to own and manage and protect the data. And so they've built an approach that uses a data platform to aggregate data from a wide variety of services, to protect, to share that data, and most importantly, to ensure that if commercial value is driven from that data, then both the city and the citizens have the opportunity to participate and to share in that financial value. That brings me to a conclusion. I appreciate your patience, and I know that I've run a few minutes over time. I hope that this has given you a high-level understanding as to how Huawei sees the smart city domain in Western Europe, how we're trying to use the platform approach, and what we think cities can do to benefit from that. Thank you.
my name is Rita Cordeiro and I'm part of the Portuguese team of Public Administration and Healthcare led by Joana Miranda. Minsight, an Indra company, is a leading company in digital transformation consultancy and information technology throughout the world. Minsight possesses a high degree of specialization and knowledge of the sector, which it backs up with its high capability to integrate the core world with the digital world, its leadership in innovation and digital transformation, and its flexibility. Thus, it focuses its offering on a high-impact value propositions based on end-to-end solutions with a remarkable degree of segmentation, which enables it to achieve tangible impact for its customer in each industry with a transformational focus. Its capabilities and leadership are demonstrated in its product range under the brand OneSight and its across-the-board range of services. We are going to talk over the next few minutes about Minsight solutions for cities. Minsight has two tools that we can use to fulfill the main goal of getting to know and manage our cities in real time on a single screen. OneSight platform, our own platform, and the business intelligence platform, EBE Smart.
Let's start with OneSight platform. OneSight platform is a Minsight Internet of Things platform with big data capabilities, and it is equipped with smart solutions for citizen relations, urban services management, mobility, security, the environment, tourism, and open government, improving the quality of both the service themselves and how they are perceived by the public. We believe in the smart development of cities and territories with an integrated approach through cutting-edge solutions that follow norms and standards. Our platform is fully compliant with the European Union standards for smart city platforms. These are the main projects of smart cities. Most of them are in Spain, as you can see, and all of them are different and respond to different needs. We'll talk more about the European Union Select for Cities and the Coruña Smart City. Select for Cities is built around the premise that cities across the world are continuously seeking new methods, technology, and tools to foster open innovation to solve challenges, create value for citizens and business, and to become smart cities. Select for Cities launched its competition to all European organizations to develop an open, standardized, data-driven, service-oriented, and user-centric platform that enables large-scale co-creation, testing, and validation of urban Internet of Everything applications and services. Select for Cities received 28 tenders from 13 different countries, and only 3 were invited to real-life piloting. OneSight platform, at the time named Sofia for Cities, was one of them. The benefits that stood out with this platform were generation of relevant information for the city officials and citizens, availability of an open platform for external developers, value creation of existing but unexploited open data, integration of new data providers, dashboards to evaluate city parameters. It helps in the decision making. Many of the measures can be implemented by the final user. Few of the activities that were developed were the integration and management of data from multiple sources and devices using predictive models and rules to generate relevant information, development of use cases that exploit data analytics for the benefit of the citizens, use of an open data sources. It was based on use cases in the cities of Helsinki and Antwerp, air quality control and forecast in Helsinki, and measuring the degree of the citizen welfare in Antwerp. This was an 100% open source solution. Let's see a demonstration of the platform developed for Helsinki. Here, the main concern was air quality and weather changes. In this dashboard, we can see the data from weather stations across the city. In each city there were 4 applications. The first one was the trafficking in ports. The next one was snow poles available and those in service. This other dashboard showed the last temperature data available. And finally, the road traffic dashboard. All this information already existed, however, it was dispersed by different systems. Now let's see the Antwerp use case. This one was linked to the comfort index. The first dashboard includes an analysis of the impact of certain parameters on the citizen's comfort index, as well as a complete study of socioeconomic level of Antwerp. There are different parameters that contribute to the city index: time, Internet of Things, temperature, pollution, noise, traffic, feedback of the end user. The user can vote whenever he wants, making use of the mood icons. Each time he interacts with the tool, he will see how his vote is counted. The purpose is to show in real time how comfortable is each level of territorial aggregation of the city. There is a map that allows the selection of the geographical area in which he wants to calculate the data provided by the dashboard. The second dashboard aimed to carry out a guide storyline and a cluster analysis identifying main variables and relationships between neighborhoods in order to segment them. Additionally, it generates an important knowledge about the city. This dashboard shows the different clusters The 4 applications in the Antwerpia platform were vessels, pollution data available, temperature data available, and traffic incidents. And the survey. Now let's talk about Corunha Smart City. This was a big project that involves more than 20 small projects covering vertical services from different city areas, like mobility, security, environment, water, energy, participation, and tourism. This project has allowed fostering innovation across the whole city, creating new jobs, boosting the growth of the IT sector, promoting new investments, and positioning the city as a worldwide reference in a smart city domain. There were an improvement in resource usage, more efficient water management, water savings in park irrigation by watering accordingly to weather and soil conditions, 20% in energy saving in public buildings, estimate impact of 10 million saving per year.
Now let's see a video about Corunha Smart City project. This is in Spanish, as it was created by the city for its citizens.
Smart significa inteligente. ¿Pero qué significa una ciudad inteligente? Significa que a partir de ahora muchas de las cosas que pasan en nuestra ciudad se controlarán desde una gran plataforma informática abierta a todos los ciudadanos. El tráfico, el riego, la iluminación, los trámites con el ayuntamiento, las actividades culturales y deportivas, la calidad del aire y del agua. Y esto es solo el principio. ¿Y cuáles son las ventajas para los coruñeses? Muchas. Porque si se controla el tráfico será más fluido, si ahorramos agua y energía tendremos mejores servicios, o si tenemos todos los eventos en nuestro móvil no nos perderemos ninguno. Pero veamos algunas de ellas con más detalle. Tendrás garantizada la calidad del agua y todos ahorraremos gastos, controlando informáticamente la red de aguas y el riego de parques públicos. Inteligente, ¿no? En cualquier dispositivo con solo mover un dedo tendrás toda la información de la actividad deportiva y cultural de nuestra ciudad, desde un concierto hasta una pequeña exposición. Tienes en tu mano toda la información que necesites de tu ayuntamiento, porque ahora, sin salir de casa, toda A Coruña está en tu ordenador, tu tablet o tu móvil. Eso no es inteligente. El control del gasto público en los edificios del ayuntamiento nos ahorra dinero y contaminación a todos. Un beneficio directo para ti y todos los coruñeses. A partir de ahora sabrás que respiras un aire más limpio y disfrutarás de menor contaminación acústica, porque estará controlada en cada punto de la ciudad. Dispondrás de visitas guiadas e itinerarios turísticos con realidad aumentada que te permitirán enseñar la historia de nuestra ciudad a tus hijos con el móvil o que los turistas la disfruten aún más. Conocerás en tiempo real el estado del tráfico, las posibles obras y las plazas de parking disponibles antes de salir de casa en tu tablet, ordenador o móvil. Más cómodo, ¿verdad? Desde tu casa, paseando o desde el banco de un parque podrás realizar los trámites municipales que necesites. Sin esperas y 24 horas los 365 días del año. Más cómodo, más rápido y con total transparencia. Una ciudad inteligente para que tú ganes en calidad de vida. Para que tengas todo lo que necesites en tus manos y para que todos los coruñeses disfruten de una ciudad más sostenible y cómoda. Ya sabes lo que es Coruña Smart City. Ahora disfrútala, porque solo contigo será inteligente de verdad. Bienvenidos a una nueva Coruña. Bienvenido a tu nueva ciudad inteligente.
Now let's talk about eBay Smart, our business intelligence tool. This is a modular analytical solution developed specifically for cities with models like document control, education, human resources, services, and many others. Now we are going to see some examples of the dashboards. Here we see a real-time performance of the face-to-face services. We can see the demand for local services in different channels, face-to-face or online, in different areas, and the impact of the demand on the performance, and the trend of demand in the different channels per hour. The human resource dashboard and the last dashboards that I want to show you were developed in the last few days for a client to monitor this pandemic. Here we can see the number of protective material that we have. This helps to prevent the lack of protective material with information available just a click away to anticipate stock return. And these are some examples of digital cities in real life. Minsight, mark-making the way forward. Thank you. Obrigado. Rita Cordeiro.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Curado, and I'm the Country Digital Acceleration Leader for Cisco Systems in Switzerland. I am part of a group called Country Digital Acceleration, and today at FICIS, I'm going to talk about how we're building smart cities, from communities to villages to cities. First of all, I would like to thank Anna Fragata and the FICIS team for the invitation and for having Cisco here. It is a pleasure to be here today, and I hope that I can share with you a bit of the work we're doing and that we can have a good question and answer afterward. So let's hit the road. At the beginning, when we look at the topics of smart cities, we're always looking about what are the economic challenges villages or communities or cities have. And across the board around the world, we are seeing that cities need to attract companies, attract the best brains, the best people who want to live there, have to have a good common ground of what safety and security is so that people feel safe, feel secure. From a budget constraint, the city needs to have a good awareness of how they're utilizing their budget to make the necessary renewals or constructions to make the infrastructure around it better. And on that topic, focusing on roads, focusing on water, access, mobility. Of course, housing, education, and healthcare are also top of mind. How can I renew my infrastructure that people need in order to live there? Education and healthcare is important because if I have a young family and I want to bring my children there, I would like to provide them a good education. At the same time, if they have an issue, if I have a health issue, it would be important also to be available a hospital with the right conditions to support me if I need to. And of course, we see this in Switzerland and in Europe. There is a demographics issue from an aging standpoint. We're seeing the population of 65-year-old plus increasing, and in the next 20 years, at least in Switzerland, it is expected to go from 1.6 to 2.7 million. And of course, we cannot forget from an environment and energy standpoint that we can need to continue to focus on renewals, and from an environmental standpoint, focus on recycling, and how we do waste management so that we can also provide a more balanced condition within the city, within the village. Finally, last but not least, how can we also leverage technology to provide more inclusion and more services from an e-gov perspective to the village communities? That means that if I live in the mountains or in remote locations in the interior of the country, I should be able to access the same type of government services as someone who lives in the big cities like Lisbon or Porto or in Zurich or Geneva. So how do we do this? And Cisco a few years ago thought about this and what were the tools that we could create and build to leverage such digitization transformation, and how could we build smart cities? And with that, Cisco created the Country Digital Acceleration Program. Long-term commitment and strategy to create partnerships with the national leadership, with industry and academia to accelerate digitization projects in the country. We have CDA program in Switzerland, in Portugal, in Spain, in more than 30 countries. But we leverage this not only as an investment fund, but also as a tool to accelerate some of these topics that I just mentioned in the areas of new solutions and how can we use technology to accelerate digitization and the creation of these new services. Of course, this is focused on the national digitization agenda. How can we leverage GDP growth, create new jobs, train individuals, and invest in a sustainable innovation ecosystem? And in that topic, we created a whole framework based on that. In terms of framework, what we usually do is we create workshops with many individuals in communities, in villages, in cities. We identify their problems, what are their business outcomes, what do they would like to build as part of their digitization strategy, their roadmap. We try to understand how do they want to plan to solve the problems, what is their value at stake, and what is its ROI. But not only that, what is the relevancy to the city itself and to the citizen? So meaning the stakeholders. How can we provide the right support to the stakeholders? Understanding the need and understanding the technology trends, the insights, and what can we do to enable such services. From an ecosystem standpoint, then we start to identify who are the right players to work with us. Is it the technology partner? Is it the startup? Can it be academia, research? It can be varied in that sense. Not only that, from an execution and deployment standpoint, we focus a lot on how can we create the proper management and ongoing support. This means that we've not only identified the stakeholders and we execute and deploying these new services, but we want them to be a long-term service for the community, meaning that it really needs to be well done from the start. And finally, last but not least, and it is important, but only in the end of identifying all these points, we will then try to understand what is the type of technology that meets needs of the citizens of the city. Is it physical infrastructure? Is it virtual? And what type of next generation citizen services we can build in order to provide better quality of life to the citizens. So how do we do this from a country perspective? We start to focus on 4 areas. And in Switzerland and in many other countries, we focus on 4 key areas. Healthcare and education, we focus on critical infrastructure, we focused on cybersecurity and defense, and finally, last but not least, smart villages. Smart cities, but in this concept, World Digital Village. So we try to understand how these different tools that you see here on this slide can enable an acceleration on digitization, focusing on startups, innovation centers, how can education with our networking academies program and our investment in universities can accelerate R&D and publication of new technologies and work with the students, but also from a GDP standpoint, how can we bring these education capabilities to accelerate employment and inclusion, GDP growth by the creation of new jobs, and of course, the traditional technology that we can leverage for city and personal security, or this new creation of smart services. We focus a lot on different areas, but the 4 pillars that I just mentioned are at the core of what we do for the program to enable the critical and acceleration of digitization projects in cities. Okay. In Switzerland, we focused on different areas. Above all, when we started to work in this program, we said, what can we do to help Switzerland achieve their goals? We first looked at the Digital Switzerland strategy at the federal government level. We started to identify the key areas of the business that we could influence and the different areas of the government that the government was aiming at that we could also assist. And we started to create the ecosystem. So basically, we saw the problems and the aim that the federal government was aiming at. And we said, first, let's bring the ecosystem together because we need to have the right partners and the right people to work with us in order to make this dream a reality. And in that sense, that's when we created something that we call Munich Mind, which is an association in Switzerland that comprehends Swisscom, Post, and Cisco as main partners, together with other companies like Zurich Insurance and utility companies. And the main goal is to create what we call end-to-end solutions that can meet the citizens and the villages' needs. At the same time, we looked at the concept of creating a portfolio of solutions, of digital types of services that villages, cities, or citizens could consume. And in that sense, we created a concept called Meine Dorfstraße, or My Village Street. Dorfstraße in German is the main street of the village. And in any village in Switzerland or in Portugal, I would say, you will always have a main street. So we focused on creating services or solutions that would be around the Main-Dorfstrasse, around that main street, because that's where the majority of the population would aggregate in certain periods of the day and throughout the whole life. At the same time, we started to identify some projects that could be interesting for the citizens to leverage technologies and to consume technology as a way to solve their problems. And in that sense, we started to say, how can we bring more job opportunities to people that live in cities, but also for tourists that come to the village? And we started to focus on co-working, and we were working with certain associations in Switzerland that do co-working, which is the case of Village Office. And Village Office, for instance, is the biggest co-working association in Switzerland. And we created, together with tourism offices in certain villages in Switzerland, co-working solutions, enabling them with wireless and video conferencing capabilities that not only visitors and tourists can leverage when they are in the villages, but also the own people of the villages can consume them. And that enables them a bigger outreach on their day-to-day business. If they have a business that is local, they can then potentially use the technology, for instance, to do export of their products. At the same time, and as I mentioned in the beginning, we're also focusing on schools, for instance. And with the city of Davos, we've been working recently in connecting schools within the different canton of Graubünden in the Swiss Alps area in order to connect students of different schools. What is the use case, you might ask? We have we have four main official languages in Switzerland, which is German, Italian, and French, and a fourth one called Romansh, which 0.5% of the population speak. But with regards to the three main languages, the objective is to help enable students to talk between themselves, between the different cantons, to learn the language better. That brings more diversity, that brings bridging the digital divide by leveraging technology with young students, and to improve the quality of life of the students, the experience that they have in their day-to-day in these villages. At the same time, for instance, with e-government services, using video to connect with different cantonal authorities that might be far from the villages where they live, in order to support the citizens on the day-to-day without having them to move around in cars or in vehicles. And in that way, we can provide a faster and easier access to services. We have many other examples, such as enabling the community infrastructure to, like wireless, for instance, for citizens to access the internet in an easy way. And of course, how can we modernize infrastructure in transportation to provide better mobility experience, okay? And in that sense, Wi-Fi on trains or in buses, or also just from an optimization standpoint of their own infrastructure. Last but not least, we also focus on retail experiences and how can we attract more people to the businesses that exist in the village. The objective from a circular economy standpoint, to create more 360-degree experiences for citizens, for the people who visit the communities, and to experience the village in a different way. We also, of course, align this with the Swiss government priorities. And the Swiss government priorities are these 6, focusing on bridging the digital divide, equal opportunity, non-discriminatory access to services, and the economy. Leverage the fact that we can use and leverage technology to upskill new jobs and seize new digital growth opportunities. Of course, as well, focus on education, research, and innovation, because for the Swiss government, federal government, it is extremely important area for them. As I mentioned before, with national critical infrastructure, continue to focus on operational costs and increase the customer experience. And finally, to continue to provide a high quality standard when it comes to Swiss healthcare. And all of this to improve the quality of life and the sustainable development of the country. As I mentioned before, we focused on many areas. We also, of course, brainstorm with the individuals in the cities, with the main stakeholders from the Bundesrat to the Gemeinde in the villages, so the city hall or the federal level that we leverage in Switzerland, and we focus on these areas. And for us, what is important, for instance, and here as an example, is to focus on digital competencies for non-IT professionals or partnering with hospitals. How can I provide a bigger outreach of hospitals into metro areas to reduce healthcare strains in cities by having a more broader impact to the lives of citizens. At the same time, it can be from an entrepreneurship and innovation standpoint, create more startup communities or co-working environments in rural and areas and villages. And in that sense, we can focus on creating businesses in a diversified way, in a more homogeneous way across the territory. Of course, from a smart tourism regions in the cities and infrastructure standpoint, focusing a lot, as I mentioned, as using technology as an enabler to define and improve the infrastructure of the city. Also bearing in mind from a digital inclusion standpoint that there is an aging demographic, especially in rural areas, and that the technology needs to be inclusive. And finally, wrapping all of this up and not only focus on what could be the creation of a digital manifesto, partnering with the local ecosystem, as I mentioned, but also focusing on providing best practices to the government so that new policies and new digitization strategies can be created. That, I would say, will enable the attractivity of more companies or more qualified individuals because of these digital services that will make the city more livable. And based on that, actually, we will focus then on what are the digital transformation outcomes. What does this mean in terms of building a smart city? Smart city concept has many dimensions. I would say that for a city to be smart, it depends on the citizens. It doesn't depend on the city itself, and the willing of all of the citizens, stakeholders of the city, to have a say and to act in order to transform in a positive way its city. Focusing, as I mentioned, on cost reduction. How can these new services deliver savings in the city and create value-added services to the citizens and to the officials? From a livability standpoint, attracting investments by living in a community where everybody wants to be in. Cities like Barcelona, for instance, focused a lot on that and created not only jobs by attracting world-class companies, but by changing the infrastructure of the city and its domain in terms of services for the citizens. And we can see that in terms of attractiveness. And if we can do that to villages, that will also be really good. As I mentioned before, from a smart planning standpoint, provide that better quality of life for everyone by creating this next generation of citizen services, updating the infrastructure from a mobility standpoint, from a video standpoint, from an internet connectivity standpoint. And finally, work with the government to create and define policies that will enable a country roadmap of highly replicable solutions, meaning that not only you create a roadmap that you can see the vision, the strategy, the execution, and how can we measure all of these topics, but at the same time, how can we create something that is very common across all the villages and all the cities in your country, and how can you replicate that with easiness and building the ecosystem, as I mentioned, building addressing the real problems of the people and addressing easy solutions is key in order to enable such smart city solutions coming to life. So by building the ecosystem and by addressing the problems of the citizens and of the city, you can actually reach your digitization goals. So with that, I would like to thank you all. And it was a brief introduction to the concept of smart city, the types of frameworks that we're leveraging at Cisco, and the type of work we're doing from a country digital acceleration perspective in Switzerland. And if you're okay, I would like to open now to questions if anyone is interested. Thank you so much.
Ok, então boa tarde a todos, bem-vindos a esta sessão do FICIS. Este ano num formato ligeiramente diferente, devido às circunstâncias pouco usuais em que estamos. Eu queria agradecer, sobretudo, aos nossos palestrantes de hoje e pela ordem que apresentaram. Richard, thank you very much for being with us today and for the presentation you've made. Joel, da Cisco, e Joana, também muito obrigado por estarem aqui hoje. Eu tenho a certeza que o tema é um tema, e todas as apresentações que fizeram são extremamente pertinentes, têm um conteúdo que é bastante atual, e eu tenho aqui algumas questões que fui levantando, sobretudo do Facebook, e algumas outras questões que também foram surgindo. E a primeira questão que eu acho que nós devemos aqui ponderar um bocadinho. No início o Richard fez a apresentação e focou na importância de termos plataformas em vez de termos soluções típicas de verticais, digamos assim, como era usual. Claro que estas plataformas, eu pessoalmente também acho que o conceito de plataforma em si dá uma flexibilidade e dá uma garantia e uma capacidade de agregação de dados. A questão daqui da agregação ou integração de dados foi algo que também foi colocado aqui por algumas pessoas que participaram, que estavam a acompanhar o evento. Claro que a plataforma promove e facilita muito mais essa tarefa, sem dúvida nenhuma que o faz. No entanto, houve um termo que ficou a faltar, sobretudo na apresentação. Eu não diria que ficou a faltar, mas que normalmente aparece nas Smart Cities, que tem a ver com a sustentabilidade. E tem a ver com a sustentabilidade porquê? Porque uma Smart City, no fim do dia, isto acaba por ser uma espécie de um serviço público, de alguma forma é um serviço público, não é um objetivo que seja um negócio no sentido mais usual do termo, e nessa perspectiva, portanto, a sustentação do negócio aqui é extremamente importante. Enquanto plataforma, e tendo como exemplo que temos as clouds, que também apareceram no mercado como sendo uma plataforma, neste caso de computação, mas que rapidamente percebemos que se transformaram em algo que prende e que, portanto, algo que também aqui houve quem comentasse relativamente a ficarmos presos quando usamos uma plataforma, a ficarmos presos numa companhia e os riscos que isso tem, sobretudo quando estamos a falar em Smart Cities. Portanto, eu gostaria de vos ouvir relativamente à importância do que é, na vossa visão, quais serão os business cases que nós temos aqui, ou seja, quem é que vai suportar futuramente esta atividade, em termos de como é que vocês veem isso, como é que isto vai poder ser sustentável do ponto de vista de implementação, sendo para mim também incontornável que as Smart Cities, elas vão acontecer, queiramos nós ou não. Portanto, vai ser importante que os municípios tenham a consciência de que as tecnologias vão evoluir, vão tomar conta dos municípios e, portanto, vai ser uma responsabilidade da gestão e da política usar essa tecnologia para fazer as cidades inteligentes e não uma cidade com coisas inteligentes, não é? Que sai completamente ao controlo deles. Com a vossa permissão, eu vou agora só fazer aqui uma breve referência e uma breve explicação muito sumária ao Richard. Richard, I was talking in Portuguese for a long time, but basically to introduce part of your presentations, and it is related with the platform and the benefits of having a platform, but also the limitations of a platform. And one of them is the dependency of when a government, wherever it is, local or global, when it stays dependent on a platform, it's very difficult sometimes to get to jump to another platform. Moving from one platform to another is not easy, and in principle, a smart city project should allow this. So I'm going to ask to everyone in this panel, what do you think about that? What is the business case for this kind of the smart city? Who is supporting this? How can we make it sustainable? And how the platform is going to interfere with all these problems? Mm-hmm. Richard, I think we can start with Richard. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be with you virtually, although I would be much happier if I was actually in Portugal physically as well. The question, if I understood it correctly, is about the platform, about the commitment that you make when you take a platform approach, your ability to move from that platform in the future, and then return on investment. So it's a very broad set of topics there. Let me touch first on the platform part of it. I think when you are looking to make a platform approach, one of the most important things to understand is that you are choosing a partner rather than a vendor. And if you think about making this choice in a typical procurement method, you will run into problems in the long term. The advice that we give to our customers when they take the platform approach is to understand that they need to make a commitment for 3 or 4 or 5 years time. Nothing happens in smart city projects in the first 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. A lot of the changes that we're trying to make will take a long time to come to fruition. And in fact, one of the biggest failures that we see in smart city projects are when customers are looking for short-term returns on investment, because there are only very, very few cases like switching to LED streetlights where you may see a very quick return. Most of what we're talking about needs to run out over a longer period of time. And so you should take that into consideration. That makes things very difficult for a city when a large portion of your decision makers, of course, will only be in office for 4 years or 6 years or 8 years. And when they think about the election cycles, they are looking for those short-term gains. So we have a disconnect between the time frames that are required in order to really achieve the benefits of smart city and the time frames that politicians have to deal with and the ways that cities evolve. So let me put that aside for a moment. You are making a commitment to a single vendor when you take a platform approach, and you should be looking for a partner rather than a vendor, somebody who will work with you and who will grow with you. And you should accept that for a small period of time, you will be married to each other. What you should do, however, is make sure that your vendor understands that there is a reality that at some point in the future, you may need to go to a different direction. And you look for some very specific opportunities. You look for the adoption of open standards. So to the greatest degree possible, you can move from one open platform to another open platform. That's the best compromise, right? To go from a closed platform to a closed platform is the worst compromise. So when you choose your partner, you look for open standards. You look for partners who understand that change and revitalization is simply a part of city evolution and city development. And you make sure that you evolve your platform and develop your services in a way that makes them portable and to some degree separates them from the underlying platform. So at some point you can move your platform but still retain the look and feel. The reality is you don't change your sewer system every 5 years, in fact, every 50 years. You don't change your highway network every 2 years or every 4 years. You don't change your railroad every 5 years. These investments are big long-term investments, and the platform approach for Smart City is really not very different to that.
Thank you, Richard. Well, like you said, the marriage are not for most of the time today's are not for life, so we need to handle this kind of problem. Okay? Thank you very much. Eu passaria agora então a palavra pela ordem das apresentações à Joana, até porque foi a Joana que fez também a apresentação de uma plataforma e, portanto, estará em ótimas condições para se referir a essa perspectiva.
Sim, porque nós, a nossa abordagem é uma plataforma que integra com tudo o que está dentro de uma cidade, porque a cidade tem várias fontes de dados, no fundo, não é? E respondendo à sua pergunta de quem é que beneficia, eu diria que, à partida, deveriam ser os cidadãos que, direto ou indiretamente, beneficiam porque eu consigo perceber melhor o que é que existe na minha cidade e daí promover uma melhor gestão. Eu presumo sempre que a gestão pública é feita de boa fé, portanto... e por aí, se eu conhecer melhor o que é que se passa na minha cidade, por exemplo, se eu conhecer melhor os eventos que se passam na minha cidade... E souber que vai haver um festival de música, agora não sei quando é que vamos ter, mas espero que vamos ter brevemente, sei que naquele momento eu vou ter que gerir o tráfego de uma outra forma, vou ter que desviar tráfego, mas vou ter também que pôr mais condutas, mais recolha de lixo, mais higiene urbana, vou ter que pôr segurança, vou ter que pôr uma série de coisas. E eu acho que essa é... Por isso é que eu acho importante a abordagem da plataforma, que eu tenho que ter...
Ana, permita-me interromper só num pequeno detalhe, porque tocou num ponto que eu acho que merece ser realçado, não é? A quem é que um sistema de Smart City está orientado? Se é ao cidadão, se é à gestão do município, digamos assim. Eu acho que estas perspectivas têm que conviver, mas claramente... Tem que conviver, não é? Mas, claramente, quando é a gestão que é beneficiada, percebe-se quem deve pagar a solução, porque tem um interesse, há um retorno, se a gestão for otimizada, se a gestão do espaço urbano for melhorado, claramente a Câmara, enfim, imagino eu, não se importa de gastar algo. Agora, se o beneficiado for o cidadão, eu não vejo, sinceramente, e com toda a boa vontade, não vejo os municípios hoje em dia, ainda mais que os orçamentos hoje são sempre limitados, a olhar para essa boa vontade de investir de forma tão simples, tão graciosa, em benefício do cidadão. Então, nesse caso, quem pagaria para o cidadão ter esse benefício?
Pois, aí temos que arranjar métodos de pagamento em que o cidadão tem que pagar quase pelas coisas que tem, não é? E isso leva-nos a outras abordagens. Mas o que nós temos nos projetos, e por exemplo no que falámos da Corunha e mesmo em Madrid que temos, em que a parte visível para o cidadão é uma coisa que eu acho que a todos nós nos é útil, integrar com dados do Waze, integrar com dados da cidade e dizer-nos como é que podemos nos deslocar ou não, ou se é melhor irmos de autocarro, porque agora estão a vir, porque como temos também integrado na plataforma os dados dos transportes públicos, eu consigo saber quando é que eles vêm, quando é que eles não vêm. Pronto, isso é o cidadão, claramente, que beneficia. Agora, em todos os projetos que nós temos, e eu diria que são 45 projetos, o grande beneficiário é a gestão ou então serviços da cidade. Por exemplo, no projeto de Cáceres, nós temos um projeto em Cáceres que é o grande objetivo era promover o turismo dentro de Cáceres. Agora não sei. E então a questão era que os turistas permanecessem o máximo tempo possível, porque no fundo era um turismo um bocadinho como o que nós temos em Fátima, que vai e volta e não consome serviços. E aí os comerciantes quiseram mesmo aderir ao projeto. Eu não sei bem de que forma é que eles pagam, mas eles, dentro das taxas que pagam à cidade, provavelmente, que devem ser algumas, é retirado esse valor para o pagamento da plataforma, e o que no fundo ajuda a promover o cidadão, o turista acaba por dizer, olha, se for por dar-lhe novos circuitos, e esses novos circuitos não só fazem com que ele visite mais a cidade, como consuma restaurantes, vá a lojas comprar recordações e por aí. Portanto, eu acho que estes projetos são projetos de comunidade, não são projetos só de... Não existe a cidade não é só um município, a cidade são vários agentes, não é? Isso é a parte difícil que nós temos aqui, com que interlocutor é que devemos falar. Ou se devemos falar com uma cidade, se devemos falar com uma área metropolitana, se devemos falar com os vários stakeholders da cidade. Como sabe, juntar toda a gente à mesa não é o mais fácil. Portanto, o mais fácil é ir ao Presidente da Câmara. Mas...
também tomar certas decisões, como disse muito bem. Nós neste momento, nós pagamos todos, nós pagamos na nossa conta de eletricidade uma taxa de audiovisuais, que historicamente esteve lá porque os serviços audiovisuais eram um serviço público e na minha opinião, o arranjo não é muito diferente. Porque nós estamos aqui a falar de uma transformação do próprio mecanismo de comunicação audiovisual, e hoje em dia estas tecnologias servem a esse propósito também, não é? E essa seria uma possível forma de sustentar, ou de tornar sustentável, digamos assim, a evolução da Smart City nesse sentido. Nós estamos com um pouquinho de tempo, Joana. Eu ia deixar agora ao Joel, se não se importa, está bem? Joel, a Cisco tem aqui uma abordagem diferente, não é? Tanto quanto sei, mas penso que estes problemas que acabam por se colocar de uma forma bastante semelhante.
Sem dúvida, Rico, obrigado pela questão. Eu tomei aqui 6 pontos fundamentais, eu acho que vão ao encontro do que a Joana disse e do que o Ricardo disse também. Portanto, para começar, e qual é que é o business case, que foi a pergunta que o Henrique fez logo no início, a redução de custos é fundamental para qualquer cidade ou para qualquer comunidade. Eu digo comunidade como pequena vila, por exemplo. E nós vemos na Europa que, como o Richard disse no início, temos grandes cidades como Barcelona, como Chicago, como Hamburgo, como Dubai, em que desenvolvemos este tipo de plataformas e que depois a questão da replicability, da replicação, é muito complexa de acontecer. Então, por isso, este shift um pouco para a questão das aldeias e das comunidades, das vilas, onde os problemas são mais comuns, para identificar os problemas. E ao identificar os problemas, nós conseguimos identificar o business case. Ponto número 2, parcerias público-privadas, ou como se diz em inglês, private-public partnerships, são fundamentais na agregação do ecossistema, como a Joana disse, para conseguir ter toda a gente à mesa e criar um campo que seja dinâmico para todos. O chamado win-win situation, do ponto de vista de aplicação do projeto e depois do seu seguimento, porque o Richard mencionou isso na apresentação dele do proof of concept, não é? A pessoa faz o piloto e depois mas vou fazer o piloto como um primeiro passo e depois haver continuidade. Terceiro ponto, para mim importante, realmente existe esse vendor entrapment, mas eu diria que não é por aí que tem que ser visto. Existem plataformas open source, existem plataformas como a da Huawei, a da Cisco, o que quer que exista. Acho que a cidade tem que ter consciência disso e fazer uma aposta, claro, em conjunto com o provider, não é? Ponto número 5, um foco enorme na questão da economia circular, porque para pequenas comunidades ou pequenas aldeias, por exemplo, é importante desenvolver um conjunto de serviços que seja bom também para o desenvolvimento económico local, para impedir que as pessoas saiam das aldeias para as grandes cidades e haver outra vez uma aproximação ao interior do país. E, finalmente, 3 coisas que eu diria que são bastante importantes, também para manter um pouco curta a minha resposta. Focarmos então em, finalmente, qual é que é a tecnologia que realmente resolve das cidades ou das aldeias, qual é que é o tipo de policy, porque eu acho que nós, como empresas de tecnologia, temos um dever importante também para fazer o drive da criação de políticas a nível regional e a nível nacional para a regulação da aplicação das tecnologias, e depois outras questões fundamentais como data sovereignty, ou seja, onde é que os dados ficam dados, se dentro do Public é o service provider que tem acesso a esses dados, se é a cidade que tem acesso aos dados ou se são outros parceiros. A questão de cibersegurança é muito importante a nível de resiliência e de manter a plataforma segura para que não haja nenhum acesso indevido. E pronto, e outra vez, como eu disse, toda a questão da criação de uma policy, de um conjunto de políticas que vá ao encontro das necessidades dos cidadãos. É verdade que as cidades vão aplicar a utilização dos dados, mas sempre com o benefício de melhorar a qualidade de vida dos cidadãos.
Muito obrigado, Joel. Ajudou a elucidar as questões, sem dúvida nenhuma. No pouquinho tempo que resta, e eu vou mesmo pedir, é 1 minuto para cada um pouco mais do que isso, eu queria trazer, e no seguimento, percebi aqui em todas as vossas respostas que existe essa expectativa de que estes sistemas possam agregar dados, que estes sistemas vão ter que o fazer. Agregar dados de diversas fontes, venham de onde vier, ou até mesmo, enfim, a tal transação ou transição entre plataformas que nem sempre são simples, e enfim, no início eu foquei o caso do cloud, cloud computing, onde isso aconteceu e acabou por assustar muita gente, não é? Por trás disto tudo está a normalização. E, na minha opinião, a normalização, no caso das cidades inteligentes ou smart cities, tem sido um processo muito lento. Nós temos algumas normas que estão, sobretudo, a um nível muito, eu diria, ainda muito político, se calhar, ou muito... Há normas técnicas de muito baixo nível, há normas a muito alto nível, até ao nível estratégico, mas se calhar aquelas normas ao nível operacional que nos permitiriam garantir a tal interoperabilidade entre sistemas, essas, na minha opinião, estão a falhar. A questão que eu vos vou colocar, e vou começar, Richard, we are talking here about standards. I don't know if you are able to understand it fully, but we are talking about standards, and I know there are some low-level technical standards, there are high-level strategic standards also in place, IEEE, ISO, and some other organizations, they have those standards. However, as far as I can see, there are no operational standards that allow us to move from one system to another in a very flexible way. How do you see in the next times the standards, the evolution of these standards? Richard, we don't have your sound, please.
That's too bad, because I was saying something very intelligent.
Okay.
I think what we're going to see is two things happen. I think we're going to see vendors working very closely with individual countries to establish frameworks that allow us to ensure portability and interoperability at a regional level. And that's, of course, what we have seen, for example, in Spain, and what's underway right now in Germany. I think the other thing that we will see is an increased level of cooperation at the level of the European, where the programs under the EIP-SEC, the Enterprise Innovation Partnership for Smart Cities and Communities, the European Innovation Partnership for Smart Cities and Communities, will work on trying to build these things where the countries or the European Commission take the leadership role and the IT vendors all contribute to that. I think today you've heard three very similar sets of messages from three very different vendors. From a philosophical perspective, we all agree with each other. We just need to sort out some of the mechanics as to how we interoperate.
Thank you. Joana?
No fundo é exatamente isso. O nosso projeto, o Select for Cities, já é uma participação num projeto europeu para criar esses estándares europeus, e nós participámos também na construção da ISO. A verdade é que na prática e nos projetos que temos em Portugal, que ainda que não sendo desta ordem, que eu vejo nas cidades, e estamos nas duas grandes cidades, é que tem que existir a necessidade, e a necessidade só vai existir quando houver uma exigência quase de que os dados estejam todos interligados. E
Joana, temos mesmo que terminar. Eu peço desculpa, deixava só ouvir o Joel uma última opinião sobre esta questão da normalização. Sim, por favor.
Obrigado, Henrique. A nível de normalização, a Cisco também está ligada com a IEEE, com a LoRa Alliance e com muitas outras organizações que trabalham os standards. Para nós, o que é importante como plataforma de comunicação é que, independentemente do protocolo, haja uma agregação de dados, uma normalização de dados e uma visualização de dados. Independente de são, seja G, 4G, Wi-Fi, LoRa, LoRaWAN, o que quer que seja, acho que é importante que haja esse trabalho e também a nível de abertura, só para terminar, de abertura da plataforma, que outros parceiros ou startups que trabalhem no campo das Smart Cities consigam conectar-se com a plataforma. Eu acho que isso é bastante importante, de maneira a ser o mais aberto possível e não fechar a plataforma, porque se a cidade quiser conectar com um vendedor específico, nós temos que dar essa oportunidade.
Muito obrigado, Joel. Muito obrigado, Joana. Richard, thank you very much for being with us.
Obrigado, thank you.
All the best for you and keep safe.
Obrigada.